We wanted to make a short film here in Hertfordshire for young people to explain some of the housing processes and rights and responsibilities they have as they move towards leaving care. Hertfordshire has 10 different housing authorities. Only 4 of them have their own housing provision or housing stock. The other 6 work with their registered social landlords. These are often called housing associations. The process for young people leaving care and accessing housing in Hertfordshire varies slightly between the 10 different housing authorities. Some parts are common, and we try and have a consistent process. The local connection applies to people who've lived in an area for a certain amount of time. So what the local housing department is wanting to do is to make sure that people who've grown up in that area do have access to social housing. However, you also need to have additional priority, and it might be due to health or specific needs. Young people leaving care are seen as a priority group, and the housing authorities in Hertfordshire give them additional priority to be able to stay in that local area. The preferred route is to use what's called the local Allocations Policy, where you came into care. So that's your local connection at the point you came into care, and that's called Part 6 duties. And the housing authorities avoid the use of temporary accommodation or making a homeless application. They give you additional priority, and then you can go directly into your accommodation. There are some conditions to that. They would want to make sure that you're able to manage that tenancy, but that's the route 1, Part 6, the preferred route. All young people in Hertfordshire now also have the opportunity to make a homelessness application in each of the 10 districts, because they're 10 districts boroughs, because they've got a local connection for what's called Part 7 homelessness applications. The difficulty with the homelessness application is that it's very short term. Housing authority may have to put you into temporary accommodation, which could be bed and breakfast, and it could be out of the local authority area, so that would present difficulties getting to college, work, etc. And at the outcome, they have to do a homelessness assessment, and in some cases they may deem that a young person was made intentionally homeless, or they did something that meant they were intentionally homeless, and again they would then not have a duty to them. Around 6 months before a young person is ready or approaching 18 and needs to move to their own tenancy, social worker and the brokerage team who liaise with housing or talk to housing would complete the necessary paperwork. So it shows that the young person is ready to access their own tenancy. It would include a copy of the most up-to-date pathway plan, the most up-to-date risk assessment, and it's some additional information. So this helps the housing department to think about where best to allocate accommodation. So they would want to make sure it suits somebody's needs, so for near work or college, or away from somebody who poses risks to the young person, family, etc. So the housing would keep that information confidential. It's very sensitive, but they would use it to think about where best might they offer accommodation. Some housing departments use something called choice-based lettings. So when the young person is ready to access accommodation, the housing department have a list or a little magazine that's sent electronically that shows the different properties that are available, and young people can put in a preference for those properties. It's often called bidding on a property. You get a number, and you have to go online and you select, you kind of bid on the property that you're looking at. Personal advisors and social workers can help with that process. Some housing authorities use that, others use what's called a direct let. Where young people are placed outside of Hertfordshire, we would look at them joining their housing needs register in the area in Hertfordshire where they came into care from. And at 16, we want to be looking at planning, is the young person going to come back to that area in Hertfordshire, or are they going to stay in the area they were placed, maybe up north, Hull, Manchester, Leeds? If they were living there before the age of 16, they are now able to make a homelessness application around their 16th birthday. It does mean that young people may get placed into temporary accommodation, and there may be some difficulties with that, but it will give young people some access to accommodation in that area if they want to stay there. The alternative would be to work with your social worker, leave and care personal advisor, to look at private sector accommodation in that area. It would need to be within what's called the local housing allowance rates. So each area has a set of bands and they pay housing benefit linked to those bands. You would want to get accommodation within the housing benefit band so that it's affordable. So young people may want to stay in that area through private sector accommodation. So your pathway plan should set out, are you going to come back to Hertfordshire? Are you going to stay in Leeds? Will you stay in Leeds and go to the private sector? Will you stay in Leeds and make a homelessness application? So there's lots of things to think about with your social worker and your personal advisor, 16, 17. We would ask your social worker to talk to the housing authority area that you're living in around your 16th birthday and ask if they will give you some priority through the housing needs register, or whether they would expect you to make a homelessness application at the age of 18. It's to the discretion of that housing authority, but we would want to have that discussion as to how it would best work for them and you. So if a young person is placed after their 16th birthday into an authority outside of Hertfordshire, they don't have the right to make a homelessness application in that area. They would have to come back to Hertfordshire, or they would have to move into the private sector.